Hello and welcome to your daily dose of alignment. So today we are looking at fear. We're looking at the whole concept of fear and how it might be holding you back and how to shift it when you recognize it in an instant. And I know that fear is one of those things that for so many of us is at the root of why we don't do the things we want to do, and we don't take the chances we want to take, and we don't make the connections we want to make, and all of these things. Fear is so often at the base of that. So that is why we're looking at it today, because I know what a universal issue this is, even if you don't recognize it. And that's why I kind of started this title by saying how to recognize it, because I think a lot of the time we don't even recognize it. So, hi, I'm Kylie Ansett, seeker and guide, whisperer to the wild ones, the weird ones, the wonderful ones. That's you. Coming to you here from beautiful Sydney, Australia. So let's dive into this. Let's dive into this whole concept of fear, and maybe I'll start by saying why it's a bit of a hot topic for me at the moment. I've been working with some clients, and I have been seeing this theme of fear being so prevalent in what they're doing, or what they're not doing. More to the point. And when we started exploring it and recognizing it, it was a lot easier to shift than you might have thought, certainly than what they thought, certainly than what I have thought for myself when I've been in these situations. So that's what I'm wanting to share with you today, is that this big scary thing called fear is nothing more than the monster under the bed, as in it actually exists only in our minds, and when it's faced square on, it kind of runs whimpering into the woods. Anyway, that's a pretty poor analogy, but I think you get my drift. The idea is that we have a preconceived concept about something that we've either experienced in the past. In fact, almost always it's coming from something we've experienced in the past, and that situation made us uncomfortable for whatever reason, and the emotion that it triggers in us we label as fear, or even if we don't label it, it's something that we see as unpleasant and to be avoided, and in our kind of reptilian brain we are in that fight or flight mode of don't go there, don't go there, and so that's the kind of reaction that happens to us when we have a fear based emotion coming up. So one of the interesting things about this is that we're reacting to a remembered emotion far more than anything that's even actually happening. And I'm sure you can recognize that in situations that you find yourself in, where you're almost, and especially when it does initiate this kind of feeling that is unpleasant, we're not in our logical brain. And I'm not encouraging you to get into your logical brain, because that's not really being in alignment either. But the point is that when we're coming from a place of reacting to an unpleasant emotion, we are totally out of alignment. And any action that we do, any thought that we have, all vibrations that we're putting out are ones that are just enhancing that unaligned place to be. So that's kind of at the root of why this is something to look at and see how we can shift it. So let me give you a bit more of a concrete example. A client was going to be going into a family situation which in the past had caused her a lot of stress, a lot of angst, a lot of feeling judged, and there was all sorts of circumstances going on that were kind of making this even heavier than ever. And she was pre-paving the whole scenario to the point where the only emotion that she was really feeling it was fear. Fear about entering into this situation, fear of being judged, fear of getting it wrong, fear of being unhappy, fear of upsetting the other people, etc. It was all coming from fear, okay? So obviously from that place, she was not looking forward to the situation. She was avoiding thinking about it, and of course just burying her head in the sand or pretending it's not going to happen or trying to block it out is actually not even that successful way of working with fear. She was also recreating scenarios from the past and kind of bringing them forward into the present, down to the minute detail of, well, they'll probably say this, and then I'll probably say that, and then she'll probably say that, and then he'll say this, and kind of going over and over it. Now, I know I have been guilty of doing this, and I think it's a very human thing to do when we are recreating these scenarios. You get into these huge detailed fantasies that are just totally unfortunately self-fulfilling prophecies in a lot of ways. But what happens is every single emotion that's coming up is coming up from that place of fear. And right there, if you check in, if you use your emotional guidance system, your emotional guidance system is there for one reason and one reason only, to let you know whether you are in alignment or out of alignment. And if you are feeling good or satisfied or positive or pleasant, then you're either in alignment or you're heading in the direction of alignment. And if you're feeling fearful or unpleasant or negative or just dissatisfied, it really is, it's just it doesn't have to be extremely good or extremely bad, just satisfied or dissatisfied. If you're feeling that, you're out of alignment. And that from that place, anything that you do, any decision that you make, any words that you speak, any action you take is going to be out of alignment, and thus is probably just going to take you further out of alignment, and it's not going to get you to where you need to go. So the first thing was recognizing that this emotion was fear, and that wasn't hard to do because with this particular client I was working with, it really did feel like fear. She was able to name that pretty quickly. But what I have found is, for a lot of people, they're not immediately identifying with it as fear. But at the base of it, judgment from others, or it could be things like even anger. Often at the base of anger is fear. But what it does is it holds you back from taking the kind of either physical action steps or mental action steps or emotional steps that are going to take you in the right direction. So that's kind of where you start off from. Now, this is the key, and this is where the magic happens, is when you actually are able to recognize it for what it is, and then shift it instantly. Now, this is why I'm using the emotion of fear, even though I know that there's obviously many other emotions. But when we sense fear in our body, the sensations that it brings up are things like a tightening in the chest, like heart beating fast, clenching of the jaw, blood pressure raised, all these kind of things which are, you know, classically associated with fear. Now, I like to use the analogy of a roller coaster, because to someone like me, to be completely honest, today, if I was to go on a roller coaster, that emotion that I would feel of being on the roller coaster, I don't know, it's been a long time since I've been on one, but I think it would be fear. I would not find it pleasant. I did go to a theme park. It's a lot of years ago now, like more than 5, and it was one of those things where it drops down really quickly, and I just found it really unpleasant. I was like, why did I pay to go on that and like get me away from it? That was fear. But the people standing next to me, you know, it was my brother, some friends that I was with. I mean, they were all those physiological sensations, hormones, emotions that were going through them. For them, that was excitement. And here's the thing, fear and excitement are so close to each other on the physiological experience. They're so close to one another that sometimes it feels like we are terrified, and it is only a 1 degree change in perception to transform that, to shift that into excitement. Now, it takes a little bit of mental gymnastics to do this, just a little bit, but the point is that once you are able to recognize the fear, if you are able to look at the situation and see what the potential excitement point is, then you're kind of on that roller coaster and you're enjoying it instead of hating it. So let me bring this back to something a bit more practical, or bring back to the scenario I was talking about before with my client, who was very fearful of a situation that she was going to be walking into in the near future, that she had been pre-paving with all these sort of negative scenarios. So first of all, and I've spoken about this before, and I'm sure I'll speak about it again, but the first thing to do was to go general. So to get out of the nitty-gritty of like, well, he'll say this, and then they'll probably say that, and then I'll probably say this, and then so on. So go general and start looking for a general way of looking at this scenario. But what is something that could be exciting about it? And then when you get that feeling that for, like, okay, so let's talk about with this client, you get that feeling that created that fear sensation, and as soon as you feel it, you start thinking, you go down the path of all the negative thinking. Well, instead, you start thinking about the excitement factor. What do I mean by that? So, of course, in every circumstance, it's going to be different, but with just a little bit of thought, especially a highly emotionally charged situation, if you are able to come into that situation and instead of recreate the same old and just play out the patterns that you've done many times before, or go down that road of everything that you'd been fearing, what if instead you could walk into that situation, and because of what you were bringing to it, your experience of it was entirely different. And not only different, but powerfully transformational. And not only for you, but for all the other people that were involved with it, the other parties. Transformation for you, transformation for them, a breaking of old patterns, a shift in the way that you will look at this situation and these people forevermore. Now that's the potential. It is a potential. Like there is a scenario where that could happen. Does that make you feel excited? This is what I mean. So fear, excitement are actually so close to each other in how what our body feels. And then once we are able to attach a scenario that unfolds as one of excitement to this situation, then every time we think about it and every time we bring it to mind, and in the moment when we walk into it, we go down the path of thinking about the excitement instead of the fear. So it starts with just working out how you could look at this as something exciting as opposed to something fearful. And then I actually like using a symbol because the thing is that our brains are so fast, and these emotions turn into thoughts and whole scenarios that we've been thinking about for 15 minutes before we even realize we've done it. So you've got to catch it in the very early stages, like when you are thinking about it leading up to a situation. And a symbol is often much easier to bring to mind than trying to remember a kind of scenario. So I actually just like to use the symbol or the image of a roller coaster, because obviously I've just described to you how a roller coaster can be fearful for one person and very exciting for another person. So if you just bring to mind roller coaster every time you get that feeling, and then that image is now associated with how you can transform this feeling into something else. So the idea is to use the image to kind of cut and interrupt the pattern. It's a pattern interrupt. And once you do that, then you are able to direct where you want things to go, as opposed to just kind of without any awareness, just allowing things to go where they will, letting the chips fall where they may. So that is my little daily dose of alignment for today. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. I would love to know any ideas you have around this. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for your energy. Thank you for playing in this space with me, where we are creating a life of purpose, that we live on purpose. I really appreciate you. Bye.